Filippo Grandi, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Welcome to Al-Arabiya, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's always a pleasure. According to your organization, United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees, by the end of June 2024, there are 122.6 million people forcibly displaced around the world. These are figures have never been seen before, and now they're even higher. And we are waiting for your next report on this. This is also include 43 million refugees, 68 million internally displaced people, and more than 8 million asylum seekers. Displaced people all around the world in large number exceeds, as I said, any known statistics of the past. I would like to thank you here for being with us to talk about this very important topics and these terrible numbers, but I'd like to start with the Middle East. And Syria is the topic today. As you know, Syria is one of the countries in the world that remains one of the largest displacement centers in the world. Around 7.2 million displaced people inside the country, around 6.2 million refugees outside the country. You visited Syria in January and you saw for your own self what situation is. Can you tell us all about it?
First, I want to say that those figures are very real and they reflect the situation of the world. So many conflicts, very few solutions to conflict. Syria somehow is interesting because it is almost a situation in reverse. There, today, with a new government, with the demise of the previous regime, problems are still very big. The country continues to be very fragile. We have an opportunity to maybe reverse the course of history and allow and create conditions for these millions of refugees and displaced people to return home. You mentioned the figures. 7 million inside the country displaced, 5-6 million outside. This is, if you think about it, 10% of that big figure of the global figure of displacement. So if we were able to solve it, for the first time in years, we would see that figure finally go down. However, this means helping those that want to go back and help the new authorities create the conditions for these returns to be durable. Not because if people go back and everything is destroyed and nothing is done about housing, electricity, jobs, people will leave again, and that will be even worse.
Yeah, talking about the people who have returned or want to return to their country. There's estimates now say there's about 1 million people have returned to Syria. There's 3.5 million people wants to go back to Syria. But as you said, I mean, things have to be prepared for them. Housing, education, water, services. Do you think Syria is ready to receive its sons and daughters back in Syria?
When I was in Syria, I met Mr. Ashara and members of his government, and the willingness is there very clearly to welcome people back. The resources are the big issue. I think that what is needed is two levels of resources. First of all, humanitarian assistance, because a lot of the problems are short-term. There is still hunger. There is still a lack of any kind of shelter for many people. There still need to access water. But humanitarian assistance is just the beginning. For a long time, we have been speaking about doing what is called early recovery, medium-term help, electricity, water system, housing programs, rebuilding schools, and creating some opportunities for work. This is what needs to be done. But I have to say, donors are looking at it, are positive, say they're interested, but they're still hesitant to make that, to take that little extra risk and to invest in the early recovery of the country. I think it needs to be done, because if we don't do it now, the fragility will prevail and we may see a deterioration of the situation, not only on the humanitarian side, but also on the institutional and even security angle if we don't act quickly. So I'm a bit worried. The foreign minister of Syria is today in New York. He's very much sharing this appeal, and I think he should be listened.
I'd like to stay in Syria but move to Lebanon. In Lebanon, it's hosting now nearly 1.5 million Syrians. And the Minister of Social Affairs, Hector Hajjar, announced in the 2nd of April a roadmap, he called it, for returning the Syrians home. This would involve removing all the tents and those who are not deemed to be displaced or either refugees should go back to their country or another third country. What do you think of such a plan that the Lebanese government is envisaging in the future?
First, I think we have to understand very well the predicament of the countries hosting the Syrian refugees now for 14 years, since 2011. And especially Lebanon, which is the smallest, has a huge, proportionally the biggest amount of refugees. And we all know that Lebanon is a country with very fragile balances between different groups. So it is a big challenge for them. And they're impatient, they want people to go back. I have to tell you, Talal, that I have had very good and constructive discussion with the government of Lebanon, with the new government, with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Social Affairs and Foreign Minister. And I think there is an understanding that what we need to do is invest in Syria to create the condition more aggressively, more actively, so that the people in Lebanon, many of them say, we want to go back, then we can help them go back. I think that to force them back, I don't think this is the intention of the Lebanese government, would be counterproductive, because people that are forced back, they will try to leave again. That's for sure. So we need to build on the willingness of some groups to go back and create conditions in the areas where they come from. In Syria, this is what we need to do. Meanwhile, you know, my appeal to not only Lebanon, but Jordan, Turkey, Iraq, Egypt, all the countries hosting refugees is please be patient a little while more and help UNHCR, help the UN convince donors to invest more inside Syria. Let's work more. It's now possible. Before it was not possible. Let's work with the Syrian authorities in order to create those conditions.
I'd like to move to Sudan, another very problematic country with regard to refugees. 1 in 3 Sudanese is either displaced or a refugee. There's about 13 million forcibly displaced people from their homes inside the country and outside the country because of the civil war that's taking place in Sudan. There's about 1.3 million Sudanese being hosted by the neighboring countries. And what did you find? And how is UN High Commission for Refugees dealing with the increased needs and the decreasing funding for the displaced Sudanese people?
Sudan, in a way, is in the opposite situation of Syria because there is an active conflict that continues to produce refugees. I was in Chad just about 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
and I went all the way to the border with Sudan. And guess what? I met people arriving. Where were they arriving? From Al-Fasher, from Zamzam. These are the places that are now the epicenter of the war. Of course, the war has changed patterns inside Sudan, with the Sudanese armed forces having regained more or less control of the capital, Khartoum. But the area which is mostly affected by conflict now is Darfur and parts of the Kordofan region. And there the conflict continues to be vicious. You know, what people tell me is that it is not just the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, the two big parties to the conflict. The conflict is multiplying, is having children. You know, a lot of militias fighting each other.
On behalf of the others.
Sometimes on behalf, sometimes on their own, and creating a condition that for civilians is even worse. And our own access inside Sudan, we are there together with the rest of the aid system, is very limited because of security, because of bureaucratic difficulties. So we have to concentrate work where we can bring help to those in need, and we have to help the refugees going out. But I have to say, and you asked me about this question, now besides access difficulties, security difficulties, we have an issue of resources. all the humanitarian agencies are in one of the worst, if not the worst, crises I've ever seen from the financial point of view. And we should make no mistakes. Less money, maybe 20, 30% less funding in places like Chad, inside Sudan, South Sudan,
Makes a big difference.
means more people will die. We should be honest about that. There is not that, we cannot do more with less. And in fact, we should do more because the people keep coming and the war keeps going on, and the efforts to make peace for now have completely failed. This is what I will say to the Security Council next week.
23 years ago, I visited Al-Fashir and Zamzam in particular, and I visited some inside Chad, some at the time the war, 2003 and 2004. I visited with the late Kofi Annan, and I know the situation, and it's really bad. But what I hear now is even worse than it was in 2004.
I think, Talal, that the most important message there, the most important messages are two. One is the international community should find unity to bring the parties finally to the negotiating table, at least for a ceasefire.
There's not enough interest.
There is not enough interest and not enough political investment. And then, at least in the meantime, please give us the resources. And this appeal is not just for the donors in Europe, in North America, is also for the Gulf. We need more resources placed into the response so that we can be efficient.
How is the situation with more than 210,000 Sudanese in Libya? Are they being funded?
Well, first of all, why are they there? Many of them are people that went to Chad, and because assistance is insufficient, they move on. They move to Libya, hoping to get more support there, but it's very difficult to help them there. And then many of them will try to go to Europe. This is what I keep telling European countries. If we don't invest in stabilizing these flows inside Sudan or in neighboring countries, they will move on, and this is exactly what is happening now already.
In Yemen, there are about 4.5 million Yemeni are internally displaced, most of whom have been displaced multiple times over a number of years. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is trying to provide the life-saving aid and displaced Yemenis, to displaced Yemenis and assist the refugees across the country. What is the reality of the situation now with the campaign of bombing and the Houthi policies as a whole?
I have to tell you that I think that Yemen is the summary of all the challenges that we see now in the world. On the one hand, a conflict that you said Sudan doesn't generate enough interest. Frankly, I think Yemen generates even less interest than Sudan. It's a smaller conflict, more isolated. There are now some repercussions because of the passage of the ships, but it's a very forgotten conflict. And at the same time, the humanitarian needs are very acute. Working in the country is very difficult between the parts controlled by the Houthis and part controlled by the government, has high security risks. We saw kidnappings of humanitarian workers, and the resources are almost zero. This is one of the operations, at least for UNHCR, which has been most severely impacted by donor reductions. So frankly, Talal, I don't know what to say other than a cry of help. If there is no way to solve politically these conflicts, at least keep alive the people until some ceasefire can occur. It's a very dramatic message, but I don't have any other message at this point.
Yeah, the picture is bleak everywhere, especially in finance. In 2024, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees received only 40% of its nearly
now it's less.
$5 billion appeal, and now it's even less.
Now it's less. We are, the United States is our largest donor. They have
Suspended.
they have suspended, so we are negotiating, we're discussing.
But they extended the suspension by 30 days.
And yes, and also they are conducting another review, which will determine the future of foreign assistance. We hope that it will be restored. Many European countries are reducing because they are investing in defense. They have to respond to trade issues. So it's a very difficult context for humanitarian assistance. I keep telling states, you have to pay attention to this, because unmanaged, badly managed humanitarian responses can be transformed into serious security issues. Not just a risk to lose lives of people, but also instability and insecurity in entire regions of the world. So donor countries should pay attention to this more, as they do for defense and trade.
You have been appealing to donors to step up to the plate and deliver more. Do you see any sign of them responding to your appeals, or is it like?
Frankly, very little. We had, I can give you the example of my organization. Of course, we're not the only one. Many others are impacted, but you know, Canada increased a bit their contribution. Spain increased a bit their contribution. Korea did. But these increases do not match the decreases of others and the freezing of some of the assistance. So at the moment, I am working with my team in UNHCR. We are one of the biggest humanitarian organizations. We are reducing our volume of work by 1/3. 1/3 at a time when we should be adding 1/3 to what we do.
And OCHA has released 20% of its staff because they cannot pay their salaries. And of course, all this means lost services and lost lives.
And what I'm really worried is, more than the impact on the system, is the impact on the people that benefit from the work that we do.
Filippo Grandi, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, we thank you as always for your input and for your insights, and we thank you for sharing these thoughts with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.